Your church didn't fire you. They didn't bring you into the office. They didn't sit you down. They didn't even have the conversation. They just bought a laptop. And then one Sunday, the music sounded just as full as it always had, except you weren't the one who was making it. So I'm going to show you exactly what's on that laptop, the three things that your church told itself to justify it, and exactly what you can do if this is happening to you right now. In my 35 years plus of being a church musician, I've played for the services, I've directed the choirs, and I've sat on executive boards where the budget decisions for music departments were made. So when I tell you this is happening, I'm not guessing. I've watched this happen from every seat in the building. Now, I need to be clear about one thing before we go any further with this. The technology itself isn't the enemy. I use it. The tracks, the in-ears, all of it. The tool itself isn't evil. The problem isn't the tool. The problem is what the tool is being used to replace. So stick with me because by the end of this, you're going to see your own situation a lot more clearly. So let's actually open it up. What's on the laptop? So picture the modern worship setup. You have software running on the laptop with pre-recorded stems. They have extra layers, extra synths. Sometimes even the entire rhythm section is running on it. There's a click track running in everyone's in-ears to keep everyone locked. And there's a subscription to one of the multitracks sites like multitracks.com. And then there's one tech person in the back running everything, or one person from the stage running all of it. But here's the part that nobody really ever talks about. All of that used to come from people. The pad that was playing was from another keyboard player, and the rhythm that was playing came from a second guitarist. That lock-tight timing came from a drummer who had been playing with the band for 10 or 15 years. Every one of those parts used to be from a human being that was in the room. So they didn't cut the sound of the band. They cut the band and kept the sound. Let me say that again. They kept the sound of you, but they stopped paying the you that made it. So how do churches explain this to themselves? Because most of them don't even believe they're doing anything wrong. And the first way that they explain this is what I call the consistency excuse. And this is what it sounds like. They usually say stuff like, well, we just want things to sound the same every week. And on the surface, that makes sense, right? Who doesn't want consistency, excellence? Who's against that? But here's the funny thing. They'll spend the money for the subscription to the site for consistency. They'll pay the tech to run it. They'll pay the sound man to make sure it stays the same. But they won't put a single dollar toward the musicians who could produce and play the same thing live. I mean, think about what that actually is. Imagine a restaurant firing its top chef to start using microwaves to microwave frozen dinners to call it consistency. Every plate comes out identical, sure. But is that what the people walked in the door for at the restaurant? And look, I'm not saying that consistency isn't important. In worship services, flow and consistency is important. I get it. But somewhere along the way, the whole we want consistency thing just became a polite way to no longer deal with people. Now, the second thing that they tell themselves to justify this is really the one that stings the most. And it's what I call the budget sleight of hand. And the script is always the same. They always say, well, we just don't have the budget right now and we can't afford it. And using subscription sites are cheaper. And you just nod along with it. Because what are you going to do? Sit there and argue with them about money in church? But here is what nobody ever does. Nobody ever sits and adds up the cost of this. So I'm going to do it for you right now. The laptop, the audio interface, the in-ears for everyone on stage, the subscription to the multitrack site, the hours that the tech person or musician spends setting it up and running it. That's not free. And it's often more than what they could have just paid you. So the money didn't disappear. It just moved. It moved off the people and onto the technology and the gear. And I'm not making this up. On my last video, an actual pastor left a comment about this, and I'll let his words do the work. He said, and I quote, he decided to go the full multitracks route with one or two singers and no musicians at all for a while. He said this himself. Another musician told me that his church decided to start leaning into these really simple 3-chord songs, and he figured out it was because they wanted to hire cheaper musicians. So the budget was never a problem. The budget was a decision, and they just decided that it shouldn't go to you. Now, the third one is the quietest, and it's the one that most of you are living right now. And it's what I call the invisible demotion. And here's how it goes. They don't fire you, they keep you. They just hand you a track and say, you can still play, but just play along with this track. And it feels like a compromise. It feels like they kept you. But look at what actually happened. See, you used to create. Now you just follow a click track. You used to read the room and follow the worship leader, whether he or she was going left or going right. You used to do that in real time. But now the track has already decided where that's going for you. You're not a musician on that stage anymore. You're a prop that makes the tracks look like it's live. When was the last time the worship leader went somewhere unexpected and you got to follow him there? Or did the metronome in everybody's ears make that decision for you already? And listen, some of us musicians genuinely like playing to tracks. I'm actually one of them. I prefer that in a lot of cases. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with the click track and the metronome in your ear. The problem is being demoted from an artist to being a button pusher and still being paid like a volunteer for the privilege. Okay, so now what do you do about all of this? Well, let's take these one at a time and stick with me here because this is really important. Let's start with the consistency excuse. So first, what you have to do is stop competing with the track on the track's terms. The click track is consistent, yes, but it can't do the one thing that you can do well, and that is follow another human being. So before your next meeting with the leadership or the team or whoever, write down 5 things that you can do well as a live musician that track can't. Covering a soloist or singer that shows up at the church. Stretching a moment out when it needs to go a little bit longer. Lifting the dynamics or the key of the song when the energy goes up in the room. Being able to follow the worship leader the moment they step outside of what the track is doing. Then say to them plainly, a track can't follow you when you go somewhere unexpected. I can, and that's worth budgeting for. And if all they want is someone to just stand there and press play, that's a $15 an hour job, and it's not yours. Now, the second thing we can do is dealing with the budget sleight of hand thing. And the solution to that is just to make the money visible. So you bring the money into the light. You don't argue about it. You don't get emotional. You just put the numbers side by side. So you add up what the whole track system cost them from month to month. And then you put that side by side with what they actually pay the musicians, and you let them see that gap themselves. So you say something like this: I see that we made a real investment in the track system this year, but I'd love to really talk about how the budget reflects the people on stage too. Because if there's always room in the budget for multi-tracks and gear, but never room in the budget for the actual musicians and players, that's not a budget problem. That's your answer to what they actually value. Now, the third solution is for the invisible demotion thing, and that is to refuse pro work on volunteer terms. So you decide what it is that you're willing to give freely, and you decide what's a job, and then set a price for that job. If they want you to program and run the tracks and play on top of them, that's not just playing. That's a music director's role. So name it for them. You can say, hey, I'm glad to serve here, but if you want me programming and running and playing on top of tracks, let's define that role and let's talk about what it pays. And here's the part that nobody is willing to tell the truth about. The exact musicianship that the church stopped valuing, like the feel and the years of experience, is the exact thing that the gig market outside the church values most and pays the most for. The exact musical skills that the church replaced with the laptop are the same skills that the wedding band industry and the corporate market and the recording sessions write a check for. So let me leave you with a real honest question. And it's one you already know the answer to. But are you a musician, or are you just the one that they use on stage as a prop to make the tracks seem like they're live? And listen, if it's the second one, that's not on you. You didn't see it coming. It wasn't even a conversation. It just arrived as a software update. But you see it now. And now that you see it, you get to decide what you're worth from here on out. I actually believe in you and us as musicians. I believe in your worth, and I believe you deserve to be paid for it. I'll see you in the next video.